This is my story. Hello, this is my story.
This is my story.
Hi, my name is Lauren Hope. I am a mental health advocate and peer recovery specialist. A peer recovery specialist is someone with a lived experience of mental illness and or addiction that is living in recovery who uses their lived experience to inspire and help other people. I've been in this job for almost a year now, and I work very closely with people who are struggling with addiction, have recently overdosed, who are homeless, or struggling with their mental illness. I connect them to resources that are in the community that maybe they don't know about. Sometimes I just sit and talk with them and encourage them, because so many times when you're battling those type of things, you only think about what is wrong with you, not what is right, and the things that you can do to turn your situation around. I never thought that I would be in a job like this, but I've had some very trying and hard times that have given me a unique perspective on helping people who are going through these challenges. So it's also really beautiful because I'm able to give the hope that I needed during the darkest times of my life. And that's not even the half of my story. About, no, 4 years ago, not about, 4 years ago, I had the life that I had worked so hard for. I was a television news reporter at an NBC station in Virginia, one of the top rated NBC stations in Virginia, and I was really good. I was out there chasing hurricanes, doing breaking news, doing investigations, what I've been wanting to do since I went to college. In my late 20s, I owned my own condo, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo in a really nice part of town. I was dating this super attractive Navy corpsman, probably one of the most attractive men I've ever dated in my life. I was in the best shape of my life, and I had it going on. And from the outside, I really did. But inside was a much different story. Inside was different. I felt worthless every day. I struggled to get out of bed and find joy in the job that I had worked so hard for. I didn't have an appetite. I lost interest in the things that once made me happy. And all day long, I obsessed about every bad thing that could possibly go wrong with me. So much so it would cause this panic in me where I'd start to hyperventilate, and then it would feel like the walls were closing in, and then sometimes I'd get these shooting pains in my chest, and then my throat would close up, and then I couldn't move. I know now that those are anxiety attacks. And honestly, in the moment then, I knew that they were anxiety attacks. But I didn't want to face or deal what was happening with me. I was angry at what was happening to me. I was sad. I felt paralyzed. I was diagnosed with major depression and anxiety when I was 16, but I wasn't accepting it at that time. I just thought this is a character flaw in who I am. I need to fix this. It's not the meds or anything chemically in me. It's that I am weak and I can't suck this up, which is totally wrong. I know that now, but in the moment I didn't. And I don't fault my parents because I know that they wanted the best for me, but didn't they really cautioned me to not tell anybody about what was happening with me. It was not something that you talk to about with your boyfriend or your job. People wouldn't understand. They would brand you as crazy. And while I know they meant well, it contributed to this shame I felt. So not only did I feel really anxious, really depressed, really trapped, really alone, I was so ashamed that was me, that I couldn't process stress or sadness the way quote unquote normal people do. So one day 4 years ago, I tried to take my own life, and I can't say that I attempted wanting to die. I just remember that day wanting to just fade away. I wanted everything to just stop hurting the way it did. The anxiety, the self-doubt, the anger with myself, the insomnia. I just wanted it all to stop. And I remember I was in my condo and I was thinking to myself, well, I wonder who's going to find me. I wonder if they're going to say, oh my God, I wish we had known. I wish we had helped her. And I started thinking about my funeral that day. I thought about who would come and who would be there and what I would wear. And then I saw this face in the crowd that just stopped me. And it was my sister. My sister has Down syndrome. And if you know anything about Down syndrome children, they don't really understand the concept of like life and death. And I knew that my death would forever change her world and her life. And I remember thinking, I can't do this to her. I can't do this to her. And so I reached for the phone and I called for help. And I went to a psychiatric facility for 5 days where I was stabilized on meds and released. And I wish so bad that was the end of the story, that I got better and everything was magical, but it wasn't. I got out of the psych ward and things weren't better. The meds that they had me on weren't stopping my really growing thoughts of suicide or my anxiety. And I took FMLA leave. I don't know. And so 5 days after my 31st birthday, I walked into my boss's office at the job of my dreams and I quit. I said, I just can't do this anymore. And he was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? All I know is that in that moment, I just wanted to get out. I felt so trapped, so consumed by everything that was happening. I just wanted to get out. So they released me from my contract, and then I fell into the worst, darkest, ugliest depression that I've ever known in my life. I got this really rinky-dink retail job where viewers came in and kind of mocked me and laughed at me, kind of, that, you know, I was this big news reporter that now was working below minimum wage at a retail job. And it created this social phobia that was so bad that I would like hide in the dressing room and, you know, have shakes and so much nervousness even trying to go to work. And the shame and depression just swallowed me whole. I stopped calling friends. I stopped going out. Instead of not eating, the only thing that made me feel anything was eating. So I ate insatiably. And then after about a year of this, every time I thought that I was at a bottom, the bottom just got deeper. I gained about 75 pounds and had stopped looking at myself in the mirror. I started pulling my hair out at the root, and any scab I had on my body or skin, I would just rip it off until it was raw. I still have scars here from where I've ripped it off. I've been learning some makeup tricks to cover it. I would just, and I just didn't care, and I was hurting so bad. I think I just wanted to inflict some pain on myself to remember that I could still feel. And I lived like that for almost 2 years. Then the fall of 2016, I just kind of quit my job and started hiding out in my room of my condo days at a time. And then it just became even hard for me to just shower. I didn't feel like doing that anymore. I would go 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time without showering. My hair was, I don't know, it was just so bad that like I didn't even look at myself in the mirror. I remember one time I did look at myself in the mirror and I cried. I like wept because I just couldn't believe what my life had become. And the breaking point for my family came it was around Christmas time, and it was my stepfather's birthday. They were going to all go out for dinner, and I was so nervous and so scared and so depressed. I had an anxiety attack at the mere thought of leaving the house. And I think then my parents realized that what I was going through was a lot more serious than they anticipated. And they asked me to move in with them, which I did. And I remember one night in their house, I was up binge eating, as I often did. And I was watching this show where they profile celebrities called Biography on A&E. And they were showing this episode of McDreamy. And I'm sitting there watching, eating, my stomach's hurting, I'm ready to pass out. And I hear something say to me, turn off the television. And I'm like, holy crap, like, am I hearing things now? Like, what is this? And then I heard it again. It was like, turn off the TV. And I had heard of people talk of people saying that they had heard from God before, but I just always thought you had to be like this uber, like perfect Christian for that to happen. So it was inconceivable that it was happening to me. But the second time I heard that voice, I knew that that's what it was. And I remember saying, God, please just take me in my sleep. Take me from this. I have ruined my life. My career is down the drain. I'm hideous. My boyfriend has left me. I just can't take this. And I remember God saying, before I even knew a scripture to correlate, he said, I never promised any of my children that life would be easy or without strife, but I did promise you that I will give you the strength to endure it. And I said, God, how can I endure this? I've ruined my life. Do you see this? And he said, Lauren, I've carried you for 2 years, carried you. And now I need you to stand up. I need you to get up. And I said, but God, I don't know how to get up. And he said, I need you to get up. I need you to get up not only for you, but I want you to get up and share your story about what it means to live through a mental wilderness. And when I set you free, you're going to set so many of my children free. They're going to see me restore you in beautiful ways. And it'll be an amazing testament to my grace and love. And that night I cried and mourned and boo-hooed. And in the next couple of weeks, I did want to get my life together. And I started watching Joel Osteen because that was the only thing that I really... the only way that I really knew how to get the word, because I was still so scared to go out. And unfortunately, as I was coming out of my depression, things with my family fell apart and things got really tense and ugly and toxic at home, and they put me out. And that began a year of couch surfing, hotel hopping, and then homeless, like sleeping in your car, all of your stuff being in a storage unit, homeless. And last year, I remember sleeping in a Walmart parking lot and just realizing that everything that I knew about life and myself was gone. And I knew that I couldn't survive the winter really in the car, or that I shouldn't anyway. And so I'd heard about this church shelter where you could sleep in church sanctuaries at night. And so that next night I went to a church shelter, and I stayed in this church shelter for the good part of 4 months while I found a job. And during all of this, I was, and I still don't really know how, giving suicide prevention speeches about surviving a suicide attempt. I was blogging, I was YouTubing, and a Christian couple saw one of my posts. They had met me once at a business networking event, and they so beautifully allowed me into their home. And they didn't know me from Adam. And the woman, Pat, said, she said, God wants me to open my home to you. And so Pat and her husband let me move in with them in Western Branch, and around the corner from Western Branch was this church called Community, and I started going to Community Church and really learning how to live Christ-like. And I think the reason why I feel emotional at this part of the story is that this is the Sparks Notes version of my story. But I could tell you countless times that God has provided for me in the wilderness through somebody, through something, through some circumstance. And Pat was one of the most beautiful blessings that I got in the worst point of my life. And she was one of many. And I often say, God, I don't deserve this love and grace and comfort. And when someone like Pat opens their home to you, helps you rebuild your life, I felt like she was God's way of saying, you are worthy. You are worthy. And it's hard for me because being homeless was rock bottom for me. It was rock bottom. It broke my pride. It stole my joy. There were so many days where I would just have to walk around because I had no money or no food. But God always provided through someone amazing. And so I stayed with Pat throughout the summer, and I gave a speech about surviving a suicide attempt to all of these mental health professionals in Portsmouth. And one of the guys there said, hey, we're about to hire peer recovery specialists, and I think that your story could really inspire a lot of people. If we get the grant money for this job, I'd like you to come in for an interview. And that was something I did not even know that was out there. And sure enough, 2 months later, they offered me the job to be a peer specialist, which has given me the opportunity to help people get back on their feet. which is an amazing thing. Again, this is the highlight reel of my story. But I'll never forget what God said to me as I was coming out of my depression, that He never promises us that life is going to be easy or without strife, but He always says in Him we have the strength to endure it. So now I don't pray about the bad things to not come. I just pray that God gives me the strength to endure whatever comes. And now I am in my apartment. I moved in here. I've been in here for 6 months, and I feel and know that God is giving me a second chance at life. It's like this scripture in Jeremiah. It's Jeremiah 31:4. He says, I will rebuild you and you will dance again. And I am so amazingly happy to be in the rebuilding period of my life. I feel like I went through a really long Job season, if you know anything about the story of Job. And God says, if you let me rebuild you in my image, you'll dance again. And so this little place, this little apartment is part of my rebuilding. It's all in one room. But I remember nights in the shelter where I used to pray for this very one room, my own place of my own. And I can't wait to see what God's dance party is going to be like for me. What the joy in the morning is. And I pray that anyone who sees this story knows that life will bring hard times, but God gives us the strength to endure it. I very much feel like the woman at the well, that God met me in a barren, deserted place when I was broken and alone, and filled me with a living water, so pure, so loving, so comforting. And now, just like that woman at the well, it's in the book of John, if you're wondering where the story comes from, I have an intense desire to go out and tell all of God's children what it looks like to live in God's grace and mercy. That's a little of my story. I do blog about my experience on a blog called Good Girl Chronicles. I blog through my homelessness, and some of them are really sad, but you'll see over time as you're reading this blog, they start to become really, really amazing, because you'll see and feel and hear the rebuilding that God is doing in my life. So I hope that this story has spoken to you in some way. It has definitely freed me. Love you. Love God more.